From Chicago's CAN TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there. Welcome to Chicago Newsroom right here on CAN TV. Legend has it that our new president, when he was a mere candidate stumping in Chicago, talked with a top official in the Chicago Police Department. And he said confidently that if he was given the chance, he could stop all the violence in Chicago in 1 week. And that bravado really appealed to this future president, who appears to have remembered it while he was watching Bill O'Reilly after a hard day of signing things and complaining about things on Tuesday. He tweeted to the people of Chicago the following message: if Chicago doesn't fix the horrible carnage going on, 228 shootings in 2017 with 42 killings, up 24% from 2016, I will send in the feds. He's getting tough on Chicago, right? So what could that mean? Hundreds of National Guard troops permanently stationed on corners in West Lawn and West Humboldt Park? And if they did miraculously manage to suppress the violence, will they just then have to remain there forever? And if not, what happens the day they leave? Well, obviously there are a lot of us who believe that police presence is vital, but it's only one piece of an incredibly complex web of solutions our city needs. I mean, how do you convince a 15-year-old with no real prospects in life to put down the gun? See, there are some of us who believe he'd rather be holding a paint spray gun or maybe a caulking gun or a nail gun, maybe learning some trades and working to rebuild our messed up housing stock. But see, that requires money and time and patience, so good luck with that. There's a group that's been around Chicago for a very long time that believes in direct intervention with the mostly young people who are killing and maiming one another out there every day on our streets. They're called CeaseFire. And we're about to meet two people who try to maintain contact, direct contact with young people who've committed or have been victimized by violence. They're trying to interrupt the cycle. They're interrupters. But once again, it costs money for that. And our political leaders say they don't have any. So that's where we're at today. We may have the National Guard, but there may be other things we ought to be looking at too. John Hardy and Chico Tillmon are joining us today. John, welcome to the program. Chico, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You are both interrupters. You're both with CeaseFire.
Yes, sir.
And CeaseFire has an interesting history in Chicago. It's been documented by the documentary film, The Interrupters. We're all kind of familiar with it. But I thought we would have you come in today to kind of give us a little bit of a status check on where we're at with the violence interruption in Chicago. I know you both do this work, and thank you for doing it, by the way. I don't know, maybe, John, you could start with us, just kind of give us some kind of a picture of what is the status of CeaseFire in Chicago today? I'm really not clear on it.
And when you ask what is the status, alive and well, and I say that because when the city hears that funding has been taken away or we hadn't had any funding in over a year, they figure, oh, CeaseFire is null and void. They're no more. We're still here because we're still in these communities, and the communities that we serve, they still need that help and still look to us in that sense. So those who were working or weren't working or aren't working now, there's still those people we can call upon or still interact with and stand up for what we're trying to do. And that's interrupt, detect the problem, interrupt it, and change the behavior norm, which is our CeaseFire model.
I mean, that obviously is going to be the focus of this whole conversation today, is what does that mean? What is this interruption and how does it work and everything? But I guess before we really kind of get down to that, I just want to deal with the bureaucracy a little bit, because, I mean, you guys, you're just going to have to correct me here, because a lot of what I think I know about CeaseFire is probably wrong. But my sense of it is that it was a much better funded thing a few years ago, and
Absolutely.
it had a kind of a peak a few years ago of having lots and lots of people. I think didn't you have like 100 people or something?
We were in 26 communities.
26 communities.
26 communities.
And I mean, is there a number of how many communities you're in today?
Right now we're in 3 locations in 5 communities because of the budget cuts. What we do, we're a data-driven organization, so we go to the most violent communities. That's how we select which communities we go into. And right now the communities we're in are privately funded. The budget cut or the lack of a budget laid off about 100 workers, and it brought us out of, we went from 26 communities down to 3.
Wow, wow. I mean, I know that, I'm not sure if this was just Governor Rauner, but Governor Rauner, I believe, you were getting state money. Let's start there. You were getting
Yes.
money from the state of Illinois, right?
Yes.
And then, is it fair to say Governor Rauner eliminated that funding, or what happened?
When Governor Rauner first came into office, he shut down all money going to social services, a lot of social services.
Yeah, don't we know that? Yeah, yeah.
And when there was no budget for a year, we went down. Let me give you a little insight to make it
sure.
to simplify it a
try to
little
help
bit.
us understand this. Yeah.
Each CeaseFire is in each site is in the most violent communities. In the most violent communities, we have outreach workers, interrupters. The interrupters are for immediate care. The interrupters are the ones in the community, the ones working with the highest risk individuals, the most infectious individuals, the ones that's been exposed to violence, the ones most likely to commit a violent act. The outreach worker provide long-term care. So what the interrupter meet these guys, because they're working in the communities, they turn them over to the outreach worker, and the outreach worker then facilitates change in their lives and connects that individual with different services that will keep him from committing a violent act. Mm-hmm. If you look at it from just a practical perspective, the outreach worker works with about 15 individuals. We have 2 to 3 outreach workers in each community. So that's 45 of the most violent individuals, 30 to 45 of the most violent individuals in the community not committing a violent act. If you multiply that times 20, that's 600 to 900 individuals not killing anyone.
Absolutely.
When you take that away, now you have 900 violent individuals unattended.
Yeah.
And they go back to their social norms.
You know, I just got to pick up on something, a word you used. You used the word infectious. And I think that's a really critical thing, because you guys look at this not so much as a policing issue, but as a public health issue,
Absolutely.
right? I'm sorry, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, talk to me about that. How is it like a public health model?
Again, it's so much like a public health model because of the fact that, when, like you said, and repeating what Chico says, as far as it being an infectious disease, violence is infectious. So it's like if I come up in a neighborhood or a household that all I've seen was violence, for every answer, then that begins to spread. It spreads throughout me, it spreads throughout my friends and everything in between that. So that's just like the health approach, because when you see that you have a problem or a doctor diagnose something as far as a disease or some like a common cold, what do? They detect what it is, whether it's the cold, the flu, or pneumonia. Address that issue, change the behavior norm from there, or change the things that that can stop that from spreading. And that's our approach as healthcare workers. That's our approach.
Piggybacking on what John said, we take our founder, which is Dr. Gary Sluckin, was an epidemiologist who dealt primarily with infectious disease such as cholera, AIDS, Ebola, and he looked at violence in the same lens. And what he discovered and what's been proven through the World Health Organization and several other agencies throughout the world is that exposure to violence leads to more violent behavior. Mm-hmm. So we treat it as a public health disease, and we believe that violence is a learned behavior, and since it is a learned behavior, it can be changed. An individual can go from a violent individual to a pro-social individual by learning new conflict resolution skills.
So I want to try to understand what a day is like for you guys. I mean, it just seems, I just have to tell you, it's a world that I have no understanding of. I almost hate to have to admit that, but it's true. I mean, we definitely live in different worlds. I don't know, just walk me through a day. What do you do?
Tell them about the hospital.
Well, I'll go with as I'll say, as a case manager in the hospital, right? So what a typical day in the hospital.
Oh, that's another whole thing we got to talk about. Let's just keep listing all these things we got to get back to. And you can't get out of these chairs until we talk about these things. But
Absolutely.
the whole thing of intervention in hospital is just a fascinating thing too.
And my typical day in the hospital, I'll just say we already have a patient that's already there. So as a case manager, I would go in, and I have a big four. You know, in basketball, you got big three. I have a big four. My first thing is safety, not only for that patient, but for the family member.
Yeah.
Health, making sure that person is cool, everything in between that, as far as his health, the family health and everything. And then after we got you healthy enough to get ready to leave the hospital, it's about education and employment. So the main thing about it is some patients will say, yeah, I want to go back to school, or I'm in school, I want to get a job and things of that nature, but in some sense that they may not be healthy enough mentally or physically to maintain or have the capacity to have that job or go to school. So we want to make sure we line those things up. And as a case manager, just like as Chico was explaining as an outreach worker, we're trying to do that long-term care, not just while we're at the hospital, we're doing long-term care. So caseloads can get big, but the whole thing is we're trying to make sure we're continually involved in this person's life, this individual life, and not just that person, that family as well. Because again, when we have patients that come through the hospital, they're not the only one that's hurt. That family member is hurt as well.
Yeah, you're referring to this patient coming to the hospital. Yes. This patient has been shot, I presume,
absolutely.
Right, or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
anything. Well, we respond to any penetrating trauma, shot, stab, or a blunt trauma, right. Anything penetrating, we respond to.
So the doctors are dealing with the bleeding and that, but you're trying to deal with this kid, I assume as a young person, you're trying to deal with this person's head, right?
Everything.
What are they thinking about?
And not just kids, adult, 8 to 80.
8 to 80.
And also we're trying to prevent any additional retaliation, because a lot of times when individuals are shot, it's chaotic in the hospital. So also we facilitate a healthy environment in the hospital so that the surgeon can do and the healthcare workers can do what they need to do. And see, a lot of people are unaware we have a wraparound program where if a person is shot, every individual that's shot, because we're in all the Trauma One centers in Chicago, we're notified and we immediately dispatch someone to the hospital and go to the hospital. And then the hospital staff notifies the people at the site, and we immediately go out to try to diffuse or de-escalate any potential retaliation.
Like you said, that golden hour. Mm-hmm. Anytime, just to give you a backdrop of any time an individual is brought into the hospital, the staff that's designated to make that call to the CeaseFire hotline call, make that staff. We have that hour, just like any surgeon that's on call or any fellow that's on call, have that hour to be ready to do surgery. We do that same hour, or that golden hour process, to get to the hospital the fastest we possibly can, get all the information we need to get from the individual or the situation itself to de-escalate any problem or potential problem that can happen in the hospital as well as in the community. So our checks and balance kind of thing is what tied the hospital into the community is whatever area that individual was shot in, or the patient that was shot or stabbed in, we reach out to the site or anyone that we have in the community. So it kind of ties in that if something's going on in the community, we can see if we can get our violent interrupters that way and de-escalate any possible retaliation.
So this is where the whole sort of public health model comes in.
Absolutely.
If you had somebody who was infected with AIDS or something and they were infecting somebody else, you gotta reach out to all, you gotta get everybody in the picture.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're talking about here, because
Absolutely.
I mean, I can only imagine this, that's where the retaliation plan is born, right? Right there in the hospital room. Wow. The friends and the associates come in and say, hey, we know who did this, we're gonna go out and get them.
Exactly.
And it's been a lot of times, any location is chaotic. Mm-hmm. And at that given time, that's when it all kicks in, survival mode. Hey, let me see out of this crowd, who can I talk to? Who seems to be the more agitated or the agitator? Or let me get with that mother or that big brother or that cousin, the person that's more level-headed, that has some control of that situation.
I can't help, I'm obsessing on this a little bit, but I want to hear more about this chaotic environment in the hospital. you know, we think of hospitals as being pretty quiet and organized, and that would not be the place where there would be chaos.
Well, you got a lot of emotions involved. You got a loved one that's sitting shot or stabbed, and you don't know if their life is hanging by the balance. So you don't know what's going on behind those doors. So you got family members and friends coming in trying to figure out what's going on. All they heard is, hey, my cousin been shot, my little brother's been shot, my
So they're like out in the waiting room
Absolutely.
or
So
something.
at any given, it's like a powder keg. So any fuse can make it just blow up. And because of how violent or potentially violent the situation was or is, you know, you never know what can go. And in some cases, the individual that probably put that person there had probably came to the hospital just to see what was going on.
Another thing you got to take into consideration that supplements what John said is it's a high-risk individual.
Absolutely.
So usually they are associated with other high-risk individuals. So you have high-risk individuals or individuals with a proclivity to commit a violent crime in this waiting room as well. So you were probably looking at it from a family perspective, where to be quiet and serene and people praying. No, we have people who respond to conflict with violence, gathered or huddled in a situation where one of their friends has been shot, and the solution they have been taught is to respond with violence. Right. So that's why it's critical that we be there at that particular time to give them an alternative to solving this particular situation.
And if, you know, they say this whole thing of, you know, if your only tool is a hammer, you know, all that. Well, if your only tool is violence, then this is the time, this is the moment when that violence plan gets put together, right?
Absolutely.
The response plan.
Yeah.
So what can you do?
Well, again, after the detection, our whole thing is to interrupt that and change that behavioral norm. In some
that sounds
sense,
like it's easier to say than to do.
In a lot of cases, it is, because when let's take for instance, when if I'm an individual that all I've known, like Chico says, violence, because that's all I've seen, that's all I've grew up around, then it's going to be so much hard for me to change a norm of that unless I'm consistently shown something different, unless I'm consistently given another option. Mm-hmm. So that's the back end of us, the violent interrupters, the hospital responders, the case managers, the outreach workers. We're consistently showing this person something different. There's another way. And consistently showing them, hey, if you don't give up or try this, if you continue to try this and try something different, then you will see the outcome for change. Because again, one thing we all know is change is inevitable. It's just a matter of whether we're ready for it or not. In a lot of cases, some people are not ready for it. But when I'm shown that and I see on the back end of it, like I'll go back to not only that patient that we're dealing with in the hospital, they're not the only one hurt, but their family members hurt. There's been cases where we've had a patient that said, I'm really not ready right now, but my nephew needs some help. And most of the times it'll be, I just want to see if this guy's going to stand true to his word. Because again, what we left out was we are credible messengers. And that's why what we do works, because we are credible in everything we say. So when I've sat there and listened to this man stress about his nephew or his little brother, and when I've helped that little brother and get his mom a job, or help the brother get in school and things like that, now that person double back on me and, hey, buddy, hey, could you help me too? I see you a man of your word. So that's the thing about it. When you consistently showing that you're credible and truly have a sincere or genuine interest in their change or well-being, that's the help. That's what really shows.
What I need to emphasize as well, we train public health workers. So it's not like we just go out there, fly by. And another thing, most of the individuals that work with us now are in school getting college educations,
as well as ourselves,
or already have college degrees and graduate degree. So we train public health workers who have relationships with individuals. One thing we pride ourselves on is working when no one has got shot. So we build the relationships so that when we're talking to the individuals, they already know who we are. It's not like a stranger.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Who you said no one got? Say that again. I didn't understand what you were saying there.
Funny.
You said people we're working with, no one's got shot.
So we pride ourselves on it.
We pride ourselves on building relationships, canvassing even before someone gets shot, so that when we come, it's a familiar face
I see.
instead
Oh,
of a stranger.
right, okay.
Because
I
we
got you.
established
All
the
right.
relationship
Yeah.
because we're already credible
You're already
messengers. And one thing, we love these people because we're from these communities. We hire from within the community, so it's individuals that's really working with neighbors and people that live on the next block. So it's not like a stranger coming in asking all these probing, asking questions, being nosy. No, this is a person from the community who you probably grew up with, who you probably looked up to, who's concerned about you and trying to help you change your life.
With a genuine interest in bettering you.
Which, of course, is the exact opposite of a police officer who's not from the community, who just suddenly shows up and starts asking you questions. I mean, we can talk about that later, but I do want to hear more about this kind of credibility thing, because you can't do what you do unless the people you're dealing with believe you, believe in you.
It's
right?
a buy-in. It's a buy-in.
How does that happen? I mean, it's kind of a sensitive question, but I assume that these violence interrupters, many of them, are people who had lives kind of like theirs at some point. Maybe you've been in prison. I don't know, for some period of time. I don't know. I mean, it almost seems to me like you would almost have to have people like that in order to get these people to buy into this whole thing, right?
I believe, for myself, I'm from the Austin area. I have a background. I have been to prison. But I believe what's more importantly, what I've done since I got out of prison.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Since
absolutely.
I got out of prison, I got a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and I'm in the process of getting a PhD. So I can identify with where they were, but also I'm an example of where they can go.
Well, talk about a guy with 1 foot in 2 different worlds, huh? It must be pretty weird when you're sitting in the university getting ready for your doctorate degree and then thinking about that other life. That's a book right there.
But you never forget about that life because you still have family members in these communities. Right. You still know people. Right. We're still rooted in these communities because we're in the business of bringing about change. We public health workers. So we made a vow to stay in the community to bring people out.
And thank you for doing that. But I guess what I'm trying to say is you have a unique ability to do this that really nobody else can. I mean, it's an amazing thing to me to think of somebody essentially coming out of that life and wanting to stay connected to it in order to help people get out of it. That's something really admirable.
The only way I differ is I don't have a criminal background. Yeah. I was a blessed one. I was in the midst of a lot of stuff, but I was just blessed.
Yeah,
I just leave it. I was just blessed to not been,
but immersed enough that you understand it, that you understand who these people are and what their problems are.
I'm them.
You are
I'm
them.
Not understanding I'm them again. So and like I say, just blessed to be to induct some things.
So
but in the same educational background, other than I'm getting a Chico getting his doctorate, and that's beautiful. I'm in the master's program right now.
I'm sorry if I sound just like like somebody who just fell off the turnip truck here, just like I just don't understand this. But I would really love to hear what is it like the first time you walk into one of these situations? Now, this may be somebody that you know, but not always, I presume, right? Sometimes it's somebody you just haven't met before. How in the world do you make that contact and get that credibility established if it's somebody you haven't dealt with before?
I'm gonna be honest, the credibility is already established from the life you live.
Yeah.
People, your name precedes you. It's like people know who you are. And a lot of times we use third-party introductions, meaning we've established ourselves in the community and somebody within the community will give us an introduction. I'm gonna be honest, the work we do takes a certain type of individual because you have to realize on a daily basis we're talking to individuals who have a violent background or probability of committing a violent act who may be armed and we're unarmed. And our only weapon is our being credible messages, training as a public health worker, and our ability to articulate the possibilities of change.
So you walk into an environment where you know that people are probably armed and you know that you are not.
Exactly.
Okay.
In a place where you've been shot, close to a possibility of getting shot or shooting.
Yeah.
And for the areas or communities that we service, you would think, man, they got to be crazy.
Yeah,
to do that.
yeah.
But somebody's got to do it.
And I know it's a kind of a bigger question, but if you're able to convince somebody to calm down, I guess there is this period, right? It's like if you can bring calm at that really critical moment and get people to just cool it and just think it through. What happens a week later? What happens a month later? Don't they heat up again after you're out of the way?
Long-term care.
Yeah.
That's what the outreach worker for. The violence interrupter is for immediate care, to shut it down right then. But the follow-up from the outreach worker is to get a lot of times, like the iceberg, the problem, the action is the result of an underlying problem. So we collaborate with different organizations throughout the city and get them whatever services they might need, whether it's mental health, whether it's substance abuse, whatever it is to help them cope. And remember, I said we have 30 to 45 individuals on our caseload. So now this person, because we help them in their time of need, now this person buys into what we say, and we become, it's almost like a form of mentorship. The outreach work, we mentor them, we take them to school, we give them, we take them to job interviews, we take them to court. If they don't have nothing to eat, we try and help them get something to eat. We help they mom get on WIC, Link. We do all those different things and connect them. And we have relationships with organizations that to get them to the front of the line. Because this person, if this person don't get help, this person might shoot somebody.
And this is something you had asked previously. How do you approach in that sense, and when Chico mentioned like being a mentor, it's the buy-in, and we coming out of pocket with some of these things, like getting these, and that's what makes you more credible. When a person see, oh man, he's not just doing this because it's his job to do it. He's doing this because he actually cares.
Yeah.
Or and a lot of times I look at it like maybe I'm being that person to this individual or that individual that I probably didn't have, or the next person didn't have. So you want that person to see how sincere, and it is beyond our job. You know, a lot of the things we do is beyond getting paid a check.
I guess once in a while you must think, wow, I wish somebody like me had come around like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it was.
Absolutely. You know?
So, you know, this all seems so reasonable to me. I mean, it's just like, well, yeah, all of this is just the way it should be. And for a while there, it looked like CeaseFire was becoming pretty big in Chicago. And I don't honestly understand what happened, but I mean, it seems like you guys really got pretty big for a while, and then it dropped off, or the funding dropped off, and the police department, I think, kind of turned on you or something. I don't know what happened, but talk about that for a while. What's going on there?
I believe a lot of people misconstrue our relationship with the police. We are not an anti-police program. We just have a different approach than police. We take a public health approach where they take a criminal justice approach.
Right.
We look at individuals as being ill or sick and having a disease where they take a criminal justice approach and try to solve a crime.
Somebody broke the law. We got it right.
We would be the same as practitioners. If a person gets shot and go to the doctor is not asking, he's not into the intricacies of who shot you, where you was at. He's into
what can we do to
what can I do to help you get better, to heal you. And that's our approach. We're trying to heal individuals. We're trying to heal communities. We're trying to change the community norm and change the behavior. We're not into all of the criminal justice aspect. And that's where sometimes it can be complex because we have two different objectives.
I mean, I think we really have to talk about this because I'm imagining viewers watching this and thinking, well, I remember that weren't there stories in the news about interrupters getting arrested, and you know, there was kind of like people who really were bad actors themselves were doing this, and so you guys took something of a public relations hit, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, I believe things are magnified. If you look at it from just a numbers perspective,
Absolutely.
About 1 to less than 1% of our organization has desisted and went back to some type of maladaptive behavior. And I think that's any organization in the world would take that.
Yeah.
And he said less than 1%, and that's over, what, 15, 16-year period?
Over 15, 16.
And let's do the math as far as that, too. So when you take individuals, again, we speaking of credible messengers, an individual that's likely to be acceptable in certain areas, or the formula of what we say is needed to really get to these individuals in the community of this violence, right? So when you get these periods where there's a layoff, no income coming in, so you got a person that may relapse. And we just talk about this one, but there's so many other professions where someone relapse or go back to some things that's of their norm. Even though they're preaching and teaching, hey, change. But when a person fall back in a situation where I can't feed my family, you know, and again, looking at over the 15, 16-year period of this organization, and this is one of the only organizations in the state of Illinois, well, less than 10, I'll say, that hire convicted felons of this magnitude. So when you do the numbers and put all that in consideration, still less than 1%.
So how would you describe your relationship with CPD today? I mean, it sounds like you don't have very much interaction with them at all.
I always say our job is to stop or curve a shooting as best we possibly can, and theirs is to lock whoever that's violating any crime up, regardless of what. That's their job. As far as the public relation part is, I can't say we don't speak.
Well, I'll add this as well. The program managers at each site has a relationship with the commander. So the program manager and the commander speak. However, the relationship is based upon not sharing information. We don't share information because by sharing information, we might stop one potential shooting, but the next 100 are going to go unsolved, or we can't be effective. So we don't share information. However, we allow the commander to know where we're working so that he don't mistakenly look at the individuals that are trying to curb or quell violent situations as individuals that's involved in it. So we have nothing against CPD. We understand what they do and the purpose they have in society. However, we take a different approach.
That's the only difference.
But it's a delicate little arrangement that you guys have to have.
Absolutely.
It's a delicate arrangement because we have the trust of the people and we have relationships, and we can walk through doors where CPD can't because of those relationships.
I would say that would go without saying. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing to try to contemplate, because I would think that if I were running the police department, I would consider you guys to be valuable assets. I would understand that there would be some friction, but I would think that the benefit would outweigh the whatever problems there are. So I don't know. I mean, have you guys has CeaseFire had any contact at all with Eddie Johnson since he's been in there?
I'm not sure.
You wouldn't know that.
I'm not sure. Someone out of the mayor's office or something like that, but I'm not sure.
We have relationships with our director has met with the mayor and other legislators in City Hall or councilmen in City Hall, and there talks about our director. His whole aim is about bringing safe environments and safe communities to Chicago. So he's not opposed to meeting with people.
Absolutely.
However, he has a vision and objective of how he want to bring it about, and that's through a public health approach. His vision is to help heal communities without incarcerating communities, without locking everybody up. And we just follow the lead of our director, who has put us in a position to do so.
To be clear, you're not saying that the guy who shot and killed somebody shouldn't be locked up. You're not
We're
saying
not
that.
condoning violence
Right,
at all.
right.
We're against violence. We're
Yeah,
violence
we're
prevention.
violence interrupters.
However, our job is to stop it before it starts. We
Right.
want to be the people that get to the individual before he ever shoots someone.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
our ultimate goal is to stop violence on the front end or shootings on the front end. Before, when it's an argument, that's when we want
Yeah.
to be there before anyone gets shot.
I know that just yesterday, as we're recording this, Alderman Pat Dowell and Alderman David Moore spoke at City Council yesterday on Wednesday, and said that the mayor has this little pot of money that he had set aside for tax rebates, and amazingly, $15 million worth of people didn't claim it, so they have the money to spend, and he wants to spend it on a number of things, and other people are saying, hey, you ought to give some of that money to CeaseFire, so you're still in the game for that. Although it really does look like on the state level, it's just hopeless. I mean, nobody's going to get any money anytime soon, so that must be kind of distressing for you.
You in a sense, but we are looking at other avenues to raise money because we can't be put in a position where we're totally dependent upon the state in order to influence violence.
Yeah. I think a lot of not-for-profits are coming to that same conclusion. It's like we can't exist if we're going to have to wait for them.
And it's no coincidence that the spike in violence occurred with the many layoffs of not only CeaseFire workers, but partners and other social service agencies throughout the city of Chicago. So the lack of funding of all these organizations that go out to quell violence and work with these high-risk individuals has played a critical part in the large spike in violence.
Yeah, I can believe that. You know, I really have to take advantage of you guys here. This is a topic that just never stops being talked about at this table. And of course, no one has answers to these questions, but you guys are closer to the answers than anybody I've met. Why are we having this? I mean, why are we having the violence in general, but particularly this spike that we're seeing right now? What are you hearing? Is it, I mean, we hear that it's slights and insults and social media and all those kinds of things. What do you feel is going on?
A lot of it is social media. A lot of social media. Well, the thing about social media now, or in the past, 7 to 8 years, it's more convenient. I can get closer to you now. I'm in your life, so to speak.
Wow.
You know, whereas before, when people said it was gang violence or some type of gang issue, I had to catch you when I caught you. Versus I'm going on live and pinpoint, oh man, he on the block that I thought he would be on, or she's over here doing this, that, and the other.
You can see the
exactly
location of the,
so the social media aspect, and I can say and do anything with no repercussion behind it. So I can say and do some things from social media that I wasn't allowed to do before, or it wasn't no problem a few years back. You know, that's just one thing. I always say that it's and this is one of the conversations that I have with Chico and a couple of our coworkers. It's an identity thing. You know, if you got individuals that in certain situations don't truly know how to identify themselves or how to react a proper way with some things, then that's what's going to happen. If I put or a defense mechanism, so to speak. So like you said, when you said you can say something to someone, and because I don't understand it, my defense mechanism is to act violently because that's all I've known and seen. So if I don't know how to identify what the right way to act, because this is my norm, going back to our approach, this is my norm, so this is why so many things is going on.
To answer what John said, also we got to look at, if you look at it from a public health perspective, it's historical. The same neighborhoods are bad. It's not like it's happening in Lincoln Park or downtown. Right. It's historical. It's in clusters. it's like certain areas are bad, and it might be areas around it that's pretty good. Most of the areas that are more affluent, middle class, or have been gentrified. Also, and we look at some of the factors, socioeconomic, under-resourced, and also, more importantly, the disease of violence hasn't been cured. No one has came in and given these individuals in these communities tools to solve situations that may occur in life. So if you never address or attempt to cure these particular problems, then the problems are going to persist year after year after year. That's why the same neighborhoods, Inglewood, Austin, Auburn, Gresham, Little Village, the same neighborhoods are violent. Decade after decade, because we haven't sent anyone in there to address the issues that's going on.
And children are simply being born into it, and it's the only thing they
exposed
the only thing they know.
Disease. Children are born and they're taught this is how you resolve.
I know that Gary Slutkin has said something to the effect that, I'm going to butcher this, but you can take an entire community that has cholera and you can heal all of the cholera victims, but if you haven't taken the cholera out of the river, they're still going to drink the water, and you know, so that is exactly the kind of thing that you're dealing with here. Eddie Johnson said at the City Club the other day that he's got a strategic subject list of about 1,400 people that he believes are the people that they are most concerned about, who either are potential for committing violence, or even people who are the most vulnerable to being violent, having violence visited upon them. And I'm wondering if you think, I mean, I'm not arguing about the number, but do you think that's true? Do you think there is a finite group of people, 1,000 people or whatever it is?
I believe he's moving in the right direction, because that's an approach that CeaseFire takes. We identify the highest risk individuals, but identifying them is one thing, but now what do you do once you identify? And these individuals not that haven't committed a crime yet. So if you don't, you leave them unattended and not working with them, then what? What do you do? That's where we come in. We identify these individuals and we work on healing them. We work on curing them. We work on changing their behavior and changing the whole norm of the community. If it's, just say if it's 100 in a particular community, if you work with those 100, what's going to happen? Violence is going to go down. I want to say one thing that's critical too. Every community we go in, on average, has a 40 to 70% decline in violence. And we're a data-driven organization that's been evaluated by the University of Chicago, Northwestern, and several other evaluators throughout the country.
So, again, another one of these just really incredibly naive questions. You'll just have to forgive me, but so you have this group of people. It's 100 people, and they're all prone to violence. And you work with them, you intervene, you take the temperature down, you do all the things you're supposed to do. But at the end of that day, they still don't have an education, they still don't have a job, or even prospect of getting a job. So how do they get themselves out of, and do they have any incentive for getting themselves out of the mess that they're in?
Again, that's showing another way. We're consistently showing another way, showing it is a way out. Even if we got to invent one ourselves, we're showing us a way out. Again, going back to the case managers and the outreach workers, this is what we're set up for. That's what we are injected in their life or in their situation to show that there's a way.
And forgive the question, but do you believe you've succeeded at that? Do you believe that there are people who you've just extracted out of that life?
Without a doubt. A lot of the people that work for CeaseFire were once participants.
Absolutely.
And you asked the critical question. We collaborate with other organizations that provide job readiness, that have apprenticeships, so when we get the individual, we don't just say, okay, we want you to stop committing violence. We connect them with other organizations that'll get them job readiness, that'll allow them to get an apprenticeship, that'll allow them to get their GED or go back to college. John flew all the way to Minnesota to help an individual get in college. Explain it to him, John.
Yeah, we had an individual that was shot. We had a kid that was shot, and at the same time, he was actually an innocent bystander, but this kid was actually having some problems getting in school. He had graduated 2 years prior, but no one had ever walked him through the process of actually getting in school. The moment they brought him to me and said, "Oh, say no more, let's get it," I gave him an opportunity to show me how serious he was about getting in school. The boy never stopped calling my phone, letting me know he was serious. I had some inroads in a few colleges. I actually worked at a junior college in Minnesota, so I called a couple of friends. Hey, I have a kid that's trying to get in school. He want to start right away. Within a week, we had him in school, getting ready to play football, lined up, and his mom was so shocked or happy, I'll say, because she said to me, nobody has ever walked this process for us. We didn't even know how to really start. All we knew was to apply.
You know, I'm still enough of an optimist, even living in this city for the last 50 years, that I can't help but believe that what you're saying is true. That if you take even the most hardened person and show some humanity toward that person and offer to help walk through the first stages of getting you out of this jungle, that most human beings will react positively. We had the sheriff on here last week, and he was kind of saying the same thing, that most people can be reached if you can take the time and...
Oh, absolutely, everybody can be reached. And just to go back to the credible message thing, see, being a credible messenger or person is not just our connection to the street. What makes you even more credible is when you do as you say you're going to do, or at least make that attempt.
Yeah.
And what's even better, like what he say as far as when you say, what do they do at the end of the day when we leave? They're still doing the things that we asked them to do because we've shown them that it works. If a kid comes in and they say, hey, look, I'm trying to get a job. Okay, let's see how much about a job you know. Let's get to this agency. And again, credible partners. Everybody has to be the right everything. It has to be the right partner.
That's so critical.
And that's what makes them
so
credible. Not just, okay, I'm going to send you to this place, and then they get to the place and they like, oh, no, we don't serve your kind. Or, no,
and it's like, this is one of my deep frustrations is there are hundreds and hundreds of organizations that do quote unquote job training.
That's right.
And it's worthless.
Absolutely.
Because there aren't jobs.
Numbers
so,
for the numbers and for that pay or for whatever percentage that they're getting because they got numbers in that fill their applications.
Right.
Or have 1,000 people lined up for a job, there's only one
That's
position
right.
open.
So somebody with no GED even,
That's right.
you're going to put them in, it's just goofy to me. It's like we have to take these baby steps first, and they have to be solid baby steps.
And if you do anything other, it'll be like a setup.
That's right.
So
That's
the
exactly
individuals
right.
like, man, I'm hitting these walls.
Yeah, I did this. I did what they told me to
Absolutely.
do. I went to these
Absolutely.
classes. Well, then what happens,
So,
right?
And that as TAs, as well as former program managers and former case managers, we went to some of these agencies to see how credible they were.
Yeah.
And some of the places we knocked off our list because they just weren't doing what they said they would do. And then those places that we still, there's a couple of places I'm betting 1,000 with. Everybody I've sent them to has got a job and moving forward. So those are the things. You have to have the right partner. You have to have the right agency. You have to have the right everything in line to be that credible.
That is the perfect place for us to end. You have to have all those things in order to be credible. I think if we could sum the whole show up here with that statement, and that's probably just about where we have to end it anyway. John Hardy and Chico Tillmon, I want to actually thank you personally for the work you do. I just think it's amazing, and it's just inspiring just to be sitting at the same table with you. So
thank you, and I hope we help continue people.
for having us.
Good luck to you. And hey, Governor, I know you watch the show every week. Give these guys some money, will you please? Okay, thanks. And Mayor too, you could do something with that. Come on, you got 15 million. Put a couple of million down here. Come on, Mayor. Let's see. Alex Holt, budget director for the city of Chicago. You could work something out for these guys. I know you could. All right, enough of this. Thank you very much for being here. You have been watching Chicago Newsroom. It is a production of CAN TV, a proud production of CAN TV. And as we've been mentioning, this is our last day on this channel here on CAN TV, because we're moving over to brand new stuff on Channel 27. Lots of interesting things going to be going on over on Channel 27 in the next month or so. You'll be able to see. We'll be on at 6 o'clock on Thursday evenings and at 9 o'clock on Friday mornings, and then 6 o'clock on Saturday and 9 o'clock on Sunday. And I think we got a lot of good things, and I hope you'll be watching us. So thank you very much for watching our show today, and thanks to John and Chico. We'll be back next week on a different channel at a different time, and we'll see you then. But in the meantime, you can watch this and all of our shows by going to this address right here. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye.